Welcome to your basic overview of quantitative research. As a reminder, it is important to be familiar with basic quantitative research and statistical concepts as you begin College of St. Mary's EDD online program. There are 3 sections to this overview. Within each section, there will be a voiceover introduction of the concepts as well as access to a reading and/or a video about each concept. If you need more information than is provided about a specific topic or concept, feel free to explore additional texts, websites, and/or resources. At the end of this section, you will need to complete a quiz with a score of 90% or higher. This is a mastery quiz, so you may take it as many times as you need in order to achieve a 90% or higher. Points for the successful completion of the quiz will be awarded in your Doctoral Seminar 1 course. The overall learning goal for this statistics module is: upon completion of this section, the learner will demonstrate understanding of basic quantitative research and statistical concepts in order to prepare him or her for the courses in the College of St. Mary EDD program. There are 3 main learning objectives for this quantitative section. First, the learner will identify key concepts of quantitative research design by achieving a score of 90% or higher on the final quiz. Secondly, the learner will identify statistical vocabulary by achieving a score of 90% or higher on the final quiz. Finally, the learner will identify key concepts of basic statistical tests, including the t-test and ANOVA, by achieving a score of 90% or higher on the final quiz. If you have any questions about these learning objectives, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Preisman. Part 1. Research Design. In this section, we will discuss the differences between experimental research and non-experimental research. In experimental research, researchers give a treatment in order to determine if the treatment causes a change in behavior. In non-experimental research, researchers do not give a treatment. Instead, they observe participants as they naturally exist. Non-experimental research includes surveys, census, causal comparative, and correlational research. In any type of quantitative research, researchers gather data in order to quantify, which allows for statistical analysis. There are 2 main types of experimental research. The first is a true experiment, and the second is a quasi-experiment. You are probably most familiar with a true experiment based on your historical understanding of research, i.e., lab rats. A true experiment is a very structured research project where there is random assignment to a control and experimental group. Random assignment is key to a true experimental research design, meaning all participants have a fair chance at being selected. Another key to a true experiment is control over variables. For example, if you think about an experiment in a lab with rats, the researchers have a great deal of control over what the rats eat, what they drink, the temperature, medicine, etc. Therefore, the variables that can impact the treatment are very controlled in this type of environment. The second type of experimental research is a quasi-experiment. This has some resemblance to a true experiment because you can manipulate treatments to a control and experimental group. However, you have much less control over variables because it is normally done in a real-life setting. Many times, you will use groups that are already formed or formed from an already existing group. An example of quasi-experimental research is a researcher implementing a new teaching method to one group of college freshman biology students and not implementing the teaching method to another section of freshman biology students. This would be a quasi-experimental research project because your participant selection would not be completely random. Rather, you would be selecting 2 groups of freshmen randomly at a specific institution. Also, you would not have complete control of the variables that impact them, i.e., how much time they study outside of class, their GPA, etc. A quasi-experiment, if set up correctly, will still garner effective results that will inform the literature. When addressing non-experimental research, a survey is a very common tool used to gather data. A survey can have three areas of emphasis. The first is descriptive. This is when a survey aims to describe trends, attitudes, or opinions of a population by studying a sample of that population. This survey is simply meant to describe the concept that you are studying. A survey can also have a relational focus. This type of survey will examine whether there is some kind of relationship between variables. Please note that this is not causal. A survey will not necessarily indicate that variable A causes variable B or variable B causes variable C. For example, you might be interested in whether employee productivity is related to how much sleep your employees get each night. You may select a sample of 500 working adults and measure their productivity at work, as well as measure how long each one sleeps on an average night in a given week. You would then be looking at the relationship between the two variables. You cannot necessarily claim that one leads to the other, but you can demonstrate how they are related. A third focus of a survey can be predictive. This is where a researcher will try to determine whether or not a variable can predict another variable. A clear example of this would be whether a high schooler's grade point average will predict their score on the ACT or SAT. Two other key words relating to the survey are cross-sectional and longitudinal. A cross-sectional survey is given at one point in time. It will give you results that indicate a participant's attitude or opinion at the time of the survey. Any type of description, relationship, or prediction will be a snapshot taken at this specific time. A longitudinal survey will be given over different points in time to determine any types of changes in trends, attitudes, or opinions, as well as how variables may be related or predictive over time. This short presentation covered the difference between experimental and non-experimental research. Please continue on to the suggested resources to learn more about these two types of research.